Throughout the entirety of known history, humanity has always been inclined towards the path of progress. Be it through the creation of simple tools from foraged materials, the start of long-lasting traditions of survival and persistent growth, or the establishment of civilizations birthed from continuous sparks of innovation, we, as a species, have always looked to the future. And with every crucial threshold we explore, conquer, and reach, great leaps are taken towards the predominant prospects of what is deemed progress. And in the 21st century, that has become amazingly apparent in the world of economics.
The accelerated rise of globalization in the 20th and 21st centuries has made the international economic sphere more collaborative, competitive, and desperate to pursue the best of progress. As such, countries have sought out ways to pursue more efficient paths of economic development. In the Philippines, a recent shift towards infrastructure-based economic development has gained prominence in the form of the Build, Build, Build program launched by Rodrigo Roa Duterte, the 16th President of the Philippines. The Build, Build, Build program was fashioned to usher in a golden age of infrastructure with intentions to decongest Metro Manila, enhance countryside development, and boost economic growth through providing more jobs and emboldening more industries. By April 2022, nearing the end of Duterte's term, 12 out of the 119 projects have been completed. The largest projects in terms of cost being the MRT3 rehabilitation project at 21.966 billion pesos, or $396 million. The new Clark City Phase 1 at 18 billion pesos, or $324 million, and the Clark International Airport Expansion Project at 14.972 billion pesos, or $270 million. By 2022, the Build, Build, Build program evolved into the Build Better More program by Duterte's successor, current President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. 194 infrastructural projects have been approved by his administration, 71 of which are carried over from the previous Duterte term. As of 2023, 9 trillion pesos or $162 billion have been allocated to the massive program, and the government is intent in fulfilling its goal of infrastructural success in the name of economic progress.
Praise and support has been showered onto the chase for the golden age of infrastructure by various government officials and economists. Representatives of the Asian Development Bank, one of the Build, Build, Build financiers, have even been quoted to have expressed satisfaction with the infrastructural initiatives.
And if you look at the comprehensive nature of the Build, Build, Build program and how the key departments under the economic cluster are working together, we are very confident that the program is on a very good foundation.
And with Marcos Jr.'s Build Better More programs, it is clear to see that economists, politicians, and nation leaders alike view infrastructure-based economic development as the crucial key to true progress.
The backbone of an economy is its infrastructure. The infrastructure program of the Duterte administration must not only continue, but wherever possible, be expanded. Established by my predecessor as it is in building an edifice. We must keep the momentum and aspire to build better, more. Necessarily, infrastructure development will remain a very high priority in our drive for growth and employment. Once again, I will not suspend any of the ongoing projects as those have already been shown to be of benefit to the public that they serve.
But can progress really be called such if it isn't viewed as holistically and humanely beneficial? What do our fellow Filipinos think?
Ang katiwalihang ginagawa ng ECIP at ng MWSS sa paglabag ay hindi naman tayo nagbigay ng consent sa prohibisyong kaliwatam na yan nasisira sa ating kalikasan.
Presyo ng pagkain!
Ibaba! Ibaba!
Education calls to increase wages come amid the continuing rise of prices of goods.
Both the Duterte and Marcos administrations have prided upon the achievements of their massive infrastructural projects, and both pursue progress through emboldening infrastructural profit.
But in the midst of continuous environmental degradation, climate change disasters, agricultural crises, skyrocketing inflation rates, and the exploitation of our natural resources in our own Filipinos, would it be wise to say that this economic shift is wholly beneficial, humane, and above all, sustainable? Is infrastructural progress really progress if various sectors are being left behind?
Representing Holy Angel University, I am Juan Simbulan.
I am Godwin Pring.
I am Izzy Daguay, and this is Finite Resources Infinite View, deconstructing the infrastructural progress in the Philippines. The persistent harm brought forth by the various build, and build better more projects can be analyzed in various angles. For brevity's sake, we will be sticking to 5 main points.
The discourse on environmental sustainability and infrastructural development has been a long-standing one. Infrastructure requires materials and space, both of which can be obtained by altering natural landscapes through deforestation, mining, and land conversion. Though there have been academic research, proposals, and discourse on how to make sustainable compromise between the environment and the infrastructural sectors, our infrastructural race in the Philippines have continued to move backwards. A number of build, and build better more projects have been planned and pursued at the expense of clear adverse environmental impacts. One notable example is the case of the Kaliwa Dam. The new centennial water source Kaliwa Dam project is being built to solve the water shortage in Metro Manila. The history of Bokot project proposals dating back to the 90s and the Kaliwa River watershed, the most recent Kaliwa Dam initiatives became the official flagship of the Build program in 2019 under the funding of China Energy Engineering Corporation, Metropolitan Waterworks, and Sewerage System. With 12.2 billion pesos allocated for this project, it is set to be in use by 2027 to supply 600 million meters of water to the metro daily. However, the pursuit of this project poses a threat to the Sierra Madre mountain range, which holds the remaining and largest rainforest in the Philippines. At the end of the project, 12,147 hectares of land, home to 172 flora species, and approximately 2,000 animal wildlife species will be affected. Additionally, the pursuit of the Kaliwa Dam project would result in increased landslides, flooding, and the erosion of the Sierra Madre mountain range, which would not only harm the Dumagat Remontado people who reside in the area, but also the state of the towns and provinces the mountain range protects from the worst of typhoons. And in spite of grave environmental damage, the infrastructure pursuits of the build, and build better more programs remain. Despite many other concerns raised against the Kaliwa Dam project, the government is intent to have it completed by 2026 even without the acquisition of whole consent from the Dumagat Remontado communities, which consists of over 1,400 families, their ancestral domains, and their agricultural livelihoods. This leads us to our next point: agricultural impact.
Budget allocated towards the agriculture sectors have always been lesser than that of infrastructure. But in the midst of pandemic, the differences were heightened and much more felt. In spite of lockdown and quarantine measures putting up a considerable barrier to agricultural transport, more financial support was given to the Department of Public Works and Highways for various infrastructural projects. And even in 2023's economic recovery phase, agricultural still falls far behind in terms of financial support. Even outside of the annual allocation of funds, agriculture workers have reported little to no assistance from the government. The average daily wage of farmers still remain at 331.10 pesos, a far cry from the supposed minimum wage of 570 pesos. And the agricultural situation in the Philippines does not only suffer from neglect, but also intentional abandonment. Farms and fisheries are compromised in order to pursue subdivisions, business hubs, and many other projects, especially those belonging to the Build, and Build Better More program. An example of which is the new Manila International Airport, a flagship project of Build, which will be built along the Bulacan coastline. According to the Advocates for Science and Technology for the People, or Agham Diliman, the construction of the airport will not only displace more than 700 families, but will also bring harm to the country's seafood supply, as Bulacan, according to a 2017 study by the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, is the most prime area for marine life to spawn. This is the reality faced by the agricultural workers in the Philippines. Little to no financial or quality of life support whatsoever. Wages that are hundreds below the government-mandated minimum, and forced eviction through militarization.
As such, it is no wonder that the Philippines is going through an agricultural crisis as of recent, with an overall inflation rate high at 8.7% in January 2023, while vegetable inflation rates went up to 32.4% by December 2022.
This is not the only sector that has suffered from neglect and downright abandonment, especially in terms of forced evictions.
Another notable and controversial flagship project of the Build, 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 and Build Better More programs is the new Clark City, located within the municipalities of Bamban and Capas, Interlock Province. Covering approximately 9,450 hectares, it is owned and developed by the Basis Conversion and Development Authority, or the BCDA, with plans of establishing New Clark City as a new metropolitan hub outside of Metro Manila. Though perceived as a key driver of growth through potentially providing 600,000 jobs to Filipinos and through luring in foreign investors upon its establishment, the city's foundation is unfortunately built upon the ancestral lands of the forcibly displaced Aita communities. The Aita people are indigenous to the northern and central parts of Luzon and are considered the oldest inhabitants in the Philippines. In late 2019, 300 Aita families were evicted in order to construct the new Clark City Sports Complex. Later that December, another 500 Aita families from Aranguren village in Capas Town were given a letter from the BCDA informing them that the land they were living on is government property and that they had to vacate on a 7-day notice. However, the BCDA insists that the Aita tribes are not being forcibly displaced, as the land has not been legally recognized as an ancestral domain, despite the Aita communities having lived there before the start of the Spanish colonial period in 1565. Hence, it is well established that the chase for infrastructural success in the Philippines overlooks the need to sustain our environment and the people living in it, be it agricultural workers or indigenous communities. It is neither sustainable in the environmental nor in the community context, and the latter can be discussed further.
According to the Department of Public Works and Highways, the Build, Build, Build program aims to sustain the country's growing economic activities and to further invest in infrastructure. The program is also set to enhance mobility and connectivity and spur economic growth, henceforth ushering in a golden age of infrastructure. But is that really the case if the marginalized sectors don't really benefit?
Funds meant for critical sectors such as the environment, agriculture, and health have been diverted towards the Build Better More projects. These projects have accumulated a staggering amount of 9 trillion pesos as of 2022. The continuous infrastructural developments also lead to the reduction of domestic investments. The reliance to foreign investments to fund these infrastructural developments also leads to the economic vulnerability of the country, straining the national economy, diverting resources away from essential public services, and putting into necessity the future repayments that may impact the country's fiscal stability. Moreover, being heavily dependent on foreign creditors makes the Philippines more vulnerable to external economic pressures and compromise its economic sovereignty.
So, we have discussed the pursuit of infrastructural progress in the Philippines through Duterte's Build, Build, Build and Marcos Jr.'s Build Better More programs, and we have tackled the various controversies that surround these ventures. To be quite frank, what we have presented here is just a mere percentage of how grave the situation in the Philippines actually is, in terms of prioritizing infrastructure development above all else. However, in the interest of time, we will conclude with this. Why did we choose to discuss this in an international conference about big history? This is a warning and a call for immediate action, not just from our government, but from international bodies as well. This chase for infrastructural progress above all else isn't a solitary issue in the Philippines. Infrastructure has more often than not been prioritized internationally, especially among the global north. We of course understand why infrastructure-based economic development is pursued. According to economist David Alan Ashworth, why is infrastructure important? Infrastructure has a positive impact on labor and multi-factor productivity, which implies higher economic output and growth. But the continuous pursuit for profit in the form of infrastructure has left many other sectors exploited, neglected, and abandoned. In fact, according to a 2019 report titled State of the Apes, Infrastructure Development and Ape Conservation, environmental and social standards in infrastructure development projects are insufficient to protect biodiversity, critical habitats, and local communities. Another paper titled The Impact of Infrastructure Provisioning on Inequality discussed how infrastructure development can increase regional disparities and inequalities, as private upper-class entrepreneurs tend to benefit more from access to these infrastructures and profit from them, while lower-income classes suffer from a lack of both. And we can see those findings in action with worsening climate change rates, agricultural crises, community displacement, and an apparent neglect of the marginalized sectors, though we don't deny that infrastructure development and economic growth is needed in order to properly support our growing population and our want for innovation of all kinds. Sustainability of our resources, be it environmental, agricultural, and human, should not be compromised in the name of profit, especially when such profit, as of present, benefits only a mere privileged few.
So, what should we do? Beyond the rise of bridges, roads, and other infrastructures, we must find a common ground that will ensure that all sectors of society benefit. One thing to do this is by adopting the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations in national policies and frameworks. Through this, the government can encompass social, environmental, and economic dimensions in providing a comprehensive framework for sustainable development, ensuring a holistic approach to economic progress thereafter. Adoption of green and circular economy. By prioritizing projects that promote resource efficiency and waste reduction, and by encouraging industries to adopt sustainable practices like the use of renewable energy sources, we can attain a sustainable infrastructure development that ensures that environmental impacts are assessed. Another is the encouragement of public-private partnerships, or PPPs. Through increased collaboration between the government, private sector, and civil society, there will be increments in sustainability initiatives across institutions that promote sustainable investments and assure transparency and responsible practices thereafter.
Lastly, we encourage and wish to embolden the spirit of sustainability advocates from a variety of sectors, be it environmental activists, agricultural coalitions, indigenous communities, working class unions, and more. We call for authorities to listen to their calls for humane socio-economic policies to be put into place, and we demand that their voices remain unstifled. In the Philippines, red tagging is prominent towards those that dare question the administration's decisions. Youth activists fighting for more sustainable policies are often met with threats towards their name, their livelihoods, and even their lives. With every claim from government officials themselves branding sustainability advocates as insurgents and threats to the state, and with every action made to silence their cause, a Philippines that truly cares for its masses becomes harder to reach, and we know that this isn't a solitary issue either. Hence, we Filipino students have decided to take a brave stand in deconstructing the myth of infrastructural progress in the Philippines in the hopes that our cause for sustainability will be listened to and acted upon, and we hope the same for those in similar fights. To finish, in the study of our past and present thresholds and in the search for the breaching point of new ones to come, may we never forget to sustain our own. In a world of finite sources, may we learn the difference between infinite profit for the upper percent and sustainable progress for every sector. Lastly, may our voices be heard and listened to, and may the right actions occur. Once again, this is Juan Simbulan.
This is Godwin Pring.
This is Izzy Daguay, and this is our fight for sustainable progress.